I don't tend to scare too easily when I'm backpacking, but I gotta tell you, there are 3 creatures that I've encountered on the trail that have given me pause and cause to rethink whether I should be backpacking alone. I still do, but I definitely take certain precautions. So put up your feet, relax for a minute, and let me tell you some stories. Well, it is an absolutely beautiful spring day, and I'm happy to be out because we've had some rain lately and a lot of the trails are wet. And in this area, they tend to close trails when they're wet because hiking does damage. So I'm at a local park. It's called Golden Ponds. There are 3 ponds here, and it's also a wildlife and a bird sanctuary. So it's a pretty cool place. And I thought, as peaceful and calming as this is, it would be an interesting juxtaposition to just take a little time and tell you about the 3 scariest creatures that I have encountered while hiking. And the 3rd one might not be what you expect. I gotta be honest, when I first started backpacking, and I had not really backpacked, well, I had backpacked at all during my adult life. So when I started backpacking, I had already made up my mind I wanted to do the Appalachian Trail, and I didn't have any experience. So I connected with some women in Georgia, and we spent some weekends training on the Appalachian Trail, which was awesome. But I gotta tell you, I was terrified of bears. I just was convinced that they were going to chase me down and try to steal my pack and get my food and, you know, who knows what. I just had the worst imagination possible when it came to bears. And on one of these little weekend treks, it was probably the 2nd or 3rd time that we went out, and one of my friends got ahead of me. It was late in the day, and it was, you know how the mountains get kind of dark even at like 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was getting dark, and she disappeared, and I was on the trail alone, and I had never hiked alone. So there I was on the side of the mountain in the gathering dusk, if you will, and I was scared. And I was tired because I'd already done, I don't know, 11 or 12 miles that day, and I wasn't used to doing those kind of miles, and I was exhausted and I was scared, and I booked it to the shelter. I was just, yeah, I really thought I was going to be eaten by a bear. I wasn't, but I thought I was. So I kind of wondered how I would cope with this fear of bears once I started through hiking full time. And I planned to do my through hike by myself, even though I knew I would meet plenty of people along the trail. I was nervous about it because I didn't know what I would do. So fast forward to when I actually started through hiking, and I had done Georgia all on weekends, as not only as training, but also just to knock out Georgia so I could start hiking full time in North Carolina. And it was Easter Sunday, which ironically is also tomorrow, several years ago. Gosh, how many years has it been? 6 years, 6, count them, 6 years. 6 years ago, wow. So my family dropped me off at Deep Gap, and because it was Easter Sunday, there was some trail magic there, but I opted not to stop, and I just turned and I headed up the hill. So I just said goodbye to my family. Feeling pretty teary. I didn't know I'd be so emotional saying goodbye to them. I know as soon as I get going that the flow of the trail, the energy and the excitement is gonna just catch me up, and I'm gonna be in heaven. I'm hiking, so yeah. Let's do this. It was as if this weight just lifted off my shoulders. It was almost palpable, like I could just feel this blanket of fear going away. And all of a sudden I realized I'm not afraid of bears. And it was just kind of the sense that now that I am hiking full time, I am moving into their environment. I am a guest on their territory, and I'm going to respect them. And, you know, if I get to see a bear, that'd be a pretty awesome thing. I did not know at the time that I would see over 20 bears during my entire through hike, but yeah, I felt comfortable about it, even though I still had some anxiety about how that experience would go, but I was ready to see a bear. It turned out it was several weeks before I actually saw one. The first one I saw was when I was just coming out of the quarterway in, and then not long after that I headed into the Shenandoahs. Actually, it was the first day that I was there, and I was by myself because I'd had a weekend off, and I was heading back into the woods. I was hiking along the side of the mountain, and I was all by myself, and I needed some sugar, so I stopped and I started unwrapping a Starburst, which was my go-to candy for sugar on the trail. And as I'm standing there opening up this candy, I hear a noise behind me up the hill, and it was kind of, you know, the hill comes down and there's trail, and then it goes down a little bit further. I hear this noise and I look back and I see this absolutely humongous bear coming up behind me on the hill, and I was like, oh no, what do I do? So I did what you taught to do. I yelled at the bear, I waved my trekking poles like this, and he didn't want to go away. He just kind of looked at me and he kept walking, and I didn't know what to do, so And I go, I'll just keep walking and yelling and hope he doesn't decide to come down the hill behind me, which thankfully he didn't. It seemed like an eternity, but after a minute or two of kind of walking side by side, he turned and he went up the hill away from me, and I breathed a huge sigh of relief because I was, you know, that fear came back, not in the same way, but at the same time I was just like, phew, I'm glad that bear didn't eat me. And I did go on to see, as I mentioned, lots and lots and lots of bears over the time that I was hiking on the trail. And I had a couple of other encounters, close encounters. But that was probably the one that scared me the most, just because it was a really big bear. It was right behind me. It was walking beside me. And yeah, it was a little bit unsettling, but I survived. Just came out of the woods here, and there was a couple reading this sign about the AT, so I got a chance to tell them a little bit about my hike, and also that I just saw a bear about half a mile down there, and actually almost ran into him because the trail was real narrow and I came around a curve and there he was. So I hooted and hollered a bit and waved my arms and backed up, and I thought I might have to throw a rock to get him to move, but he finally decided to back up and jump down the ridge. It was, like I said, the trail was pretty narrow. He didn't have a lot of place to go, but he just jumped down the steep hill there and got out of the way. So I spent the rest of that little section yelling for no more bears. Make sure the bears stay away. That's my count 4 today. 5 since I've been in the Shenandoah. I said I think that's enough for me, but somehow I have a feeling I might see more. My second scariest wildlife encounter happened when I was on the PCT, and I had started out to do a through hike, but as luck would have it, I was only able to do a week. I got injured. That's a whole different story. You can watch those videos up here. But I was hiking by myself again. I'd started out, I met some friends, but they had gotten ahead of me because I decided to camp. I was trying to start slow and then build up miles, and so I had decided to camp while they went on to Mount Laguna. So I started back on the trail after an overnight, and I was hiking by myself, and it turned out that I hiked for almost 2 days without seeing anybody. I was climbing up a mountain, and there was a big bluff above me, and it was almost kind of like a hairpin turn. So I came up the mountain and just made a sharp turn, and right as I did, I heard this just huge noise of something in the bushes running away, and at the same time I heard this just deep, deep growl. And I thought, oh my gosh, I just scared something really big. And I stood there for a minute and I thought, okay, what do I do? Mountain lion. It had to be a mountain lion. It definitely was not a bear in the desert of Southern California. And I was definitely scared. I was like, I didn't expect to encounter a mountain lion this early on in my hike. And it shook me up, and I was like, okay, I have to make noise, and I know not to run. So I stood there for a few minutes and I kind of waited, looking up the bluff to think, am I going to see this creature or am I just going to hear him? As it turned out, I did not see that mountain lion. After I waited just a bit, I continued on with very heightened senses. I was very alert and scared that he might loop around, or that maybe he was tracking me as I hiked. It made me really nervous. And when I looked in the guidebook to see where I was going to be camping that night, there was an established campsite, but there was a note in Far Out that said that there had been some mountain lion activity in the area. So I was kind of anxious about that, but when I got into camp that evening, there was somebody already there, and that made me feel a bit better. So I found myself a spot and I spent the night, and didn't really worry about getting eaten in the night, but I was anxious when I got up early the next morning to carry on. So I hiked a few miles and decided to stop at a water source and have second breakfast, and there I was, just kind of leaning against a tree having a snack. Well, I was chilling at the water tank, and a couple of hikers that I met a few days ago at the restaurant in Mount Laguna came up, and they were breathless and excited and scared because Garrett said he had just stepped off the trail for a bio break and scared a mountain lion, and he saw the mountain lion, so it was definitely not his imagination. So that sealed the deal for me. I knew for sure that what I had encountered was a mountain lion, even though I didn't see it. As I thought about that experience afterwards, I realized that the mountain lion must have been sleeping up there on that bluff, and I think I startled him, so I guess I'm maybe lucky that he ran away instead of attacking me. Even though that was a scary experience, I kind of wished that I'd seen the mountain lion. I was a little disappointed. I felt a little robbed that I didn't see him. But when I was through hiking the Colorado Trail last summer, I was up one morning very early hiking up a mountain, And I looked way up above me and I saw a mountain lion walking down the trail. And it was honestly one of the most magnificent creatures I've ever seen. I do believe it's a mountain lion way up there. That is so cool. So I definitely would not want to come face to face with one or scare one that decided that it wanted to hunt me down as prey. That really doesn't happen very often, although they are out there, and mountain lion human encounters are becoming more frequent from what I hear. But anyway, it's a beautiful animal. I was really lucky to see it last year, and I was really lucky that it didn't attack me on the PCT. If you're enjoying this video, make sure that you've hit that subscribe button down below, and that will help YouTube know that my videos are worth watching and get them in front of more people like you who enjoy the outdoors, enjoy backpacking and hiking. So that brings me to the third scariest creature that I've met on the trail, and actually this would be the number one that scared me the most of anything that I have encountered on the trail. And I've actually had a couple of different instances where people made me quite uncomfortable. The first time was when I was camping at Trent's Grocery, and it turned out that that night I was camping alone. It was a Friday night, and that's a kind of an RV type campground behind Trent's Grocery near Bland, Virginia. And there's a little road that runs through the campground, but they have space for thru hikers where you can tent. And so I set up my tent, and I was nursing an injured knee. So I was there early in the afternoon, and I was icing it and just relaxing and having a good time, but nobody else showed up. So I ended up camping by myself, and about, I don't know, 10, 11 o'clock at night, there started to be vehicle traffic on the little short road in the camping area. Cars would come in and they'd park for a little while, and then they'd go back out again. And this happened several times, and I was like, I don't know what is going on out there. I don't know if those are drug deals, if people are, you know, if it's Lover's Lane. I don't know. It made me really uncomfortable to the point where, number one, I didn't want to get out of my tent because I didn't want anybody to see that I was a woman camping alone. I mean, obviously they could see the tent, but if I didn't get out, they didn't know who was in the tent. I didn't get out of my tent, and I was actually anxious enough that I was texting. I had cell service there, and I was texting my then husband and telling him what was going on. And I was like, just so you know, this is where I'm at. This is what's happening. And if for some reason you don't hear from me in the morning, send out the search parties, because I just didn't know. So those people were probably harmless, but they definitely made me anxious. The next time I was really kind of intimidated by a person was when I got to, I believe it was the Sam Moore shelter in Virginia, not far from the West Virginia border. And I get there at the end of the day, and there is a man who looks like a drifter. He was wearing jeans. He didn't have any like real thru hiking gear. And I think as you're a thru hiker, it doesn't take very long for you to start recognizing other hikers and differentiating between day hikers or people who might just be kind of almost like living on the trail. So this gentleman was there in the shelter, and I thought, even though it's raining, I'm just going to go ahead and set up my tent so I have a little bit of distance. And I knew there were some other hikers coming in behind me, so I thought at least there'll be some safety in numbers. The man had a big knife that he wasn't afraid of showing off, and I thought, God forbid that he decides to attack somebody in their tent at night. And it turned out that the only hikers who were there camping were women. So there were, I think, 4 or 5 of us women. A couple stayed in the shelter where he stayed. I stayed in my tent, and then there was a separate little picnic pavilion nearby. When I got up in the morning, this man was making very negative comments about women. It was really kind of scary. And so I pulled aside some of the other women, and I said, you just need to know he's saying these things, and you probably want to just get out of here as quick as you can. And that's what I did. I packed up and I left and went on my way. I didn't have any fear that he would follow me. He just seemed like he was kind of sort of hanging out, and I don't know what for, but like I said, he might have just been living on the trail. But it was enough to make me really uncomfortable and concerned. So I just hightailed it out of there, got on with my hike, and everything was fine. But it is interesting how just encounters with some people can kind of set your spidey senses off and make you pretty nervous. And when I think about it, between the bears and the mountain lions and the people, unsavory people are the ones who make me the most uncomfortable because they're much more unpredictable. Wild animals typically have habits that you can learn about and learn what to do, like waving your poles and yelling at a bear and not running from a mountain lion. But unpredictable people, particularly if they have some kind of mental issues that might be causing them to be homeless or causing them to be out on the trail seeking something, unpredictable people can be really dangerous. So anyway, that's one of my chief concerns about through hiking alone, or just hiking alone, backpacking alone. A lot of people say, oh, do you carry a gun? Do you carry a knife? I do have a knife. It's a very small knife. I don't carry a gun, partly because I don't want to be in a situation where I would need to shoot somebody. That's not what I want. So I don't carry those kinds of things. I just tend to try to size people up pretty quickly and move on if I need to. And I've got my Garmin in reach if I need to call for SOS. Even though we hear a lot about scary situations where people are endangered when they're in the woods, the number of people that go out into the woods every year is astronomical compared to the number of people that fall prey to other humans or to wild animals. So in general, I really feel pretty safe hiking on my own, although it does make sense to take a lot of precautions. And there are certain times where it's not so much the creatures that are out there that scare me, but just the environment and some of the challenges that I've encountered, like climbing up 𝐂𝐴𝐻 Pass on the Colorado Trail, which you can see my video about that. The pass is up that way. I just saw a hiker a few minutes ago, and I'm not sure if that's the cornice right up there or if it's more off to the side. It's a little tricky. That is the one and only time that I've ever stopped before I did a climb and made a farewell message for my family, because that's how scared I was that day. But for the most part, I feel pretty safe, and I'll continue hiking alone when it makes sense. And when I feel like it makes more sense to hike with a friend, then I will do that. And I'm very excited about my upcoming Pinhoti Trail through hike, because I do have a friend that I met on the Colorado Trail. 𝐶𝐮𝐩𝐬 is going to be coming with me. She does not carry a gun, so you have to ask her about that sometime and find out how she got that name. It's kind of funny. So we're going to be hiking together on the Pinhoti in a few weeks, and that's going to be a lot of fun. So those are my scary stories, and I look forward to hearing from you if you got some tales that you want to share down in the comments below. And I will see you here again next time.